So the next stage is the construction mesh, as what I like to call it. Although you'll also hear high poly and that kind of thing. But for me, I kind of separate the two into construction mesh and high poly, and I'll explain that later sort of as we go along. But essentially what I mean by construction mesh is we're going to use subdivision modeling workflow or techniques to create this radio in as much detail as possible modeled in, so that we can then extract that information using the baking process to then project that onto our low poly using normal maps. So if you're not familiar with the workflow, don't worry, because I will go through it and take our time as we do so and explain as we go. Now, I've not kind of prepared or pre-planned this. I'm just going to make this live, so to speak. So if I hit issues, I'm not sort of hiding behind those and pretending it's all perfect. I'm just going to go through and make it and overcome those issues live as we go through, so you can see how I might approach my problem solving, which is also a really important skill when modeling. And essentially that's all it is. You're resolving issues and problems on how to create something effectively. So there's a lot of information on subdivision modeling. Some of my favorite, if you type in subdivision modeling on Polycount forum, there's a load of information there, which is really, really valuable. So one thing that I am just going to do before I get going is we've got our image planes here, and these are all in here. So I might just rename these to keep myself organized. So image plane, and I'll do top, image plane, front, image plane, side. But then what I'm also going to do is take those and press Ctrl G to group them, and then just call them image planes. So then it's all just nice and organized for me. So I've got those there in a nice group, and I can select them manually from my outliner, but I can't select them in here because they are on their own layer and locked away as ref. And perhaps just to keep this synchronized, I might want to image planes, but then if I try that, it shouldn't let me because I've already got image planes labeled there. So I might just, that's probably why I had it ref in the first place, but I'll just put IP for image planes. And then that's there. So I know what they are, they're locked, and it's all ready to go. So first thing that we're going to do for this is create ourselves looking at this. And I'm also, just to let you know, I've got my reference image on my other screen, so I can kind of play around and zoom in and look at all sort of angles, is just break down our asset, our model, and how we might construct this. So looking at it, essentially we've got these different sections. So we've got this front panel, this middle panel, and this back panel, which are divided by this kind of band. So, and you can see the leather's kind of been pulled in and held there. So I might want to create these in 3 separate pieces, at least at the end anyway. But initially I might want to create this as a single piece, because I want to make sure that this bevel, this rounded edge, this corner, is equal and even all the way through. And then obviously we've got this indentation here. So the green area will be one mesh initially, which may get separated out into 3, which will help the UV section, because we've got this kind of, copper-esque beading going around. And then we've got the plates. So this plate will be a piece, and then each individual asset or knob will be an individual piece as well. So the way I kind of approach it, if it's made out of a separate piece of geometry in real life, make it out of a separate piece of geometry in digital life. And then you'll get the best kind of effects. If it's molded, then create it molded. So this piece will be separate from that piece. And then what I might try and do, because I don't want these holes or these buttons to just protrude through the mesh. I want this slight edge where you can actually see the hole in which the button's pushed down into, to really give it that extra little bit. So I'll probably model in these holes, figure out a way of doing it, as well as these. Then this glass panel, I'll figure out, I might just sort of indent that and have then a sheet of glass over the top, and then that kind of stuff. So all of these will be individual pieces. The lettering will be individual, separate. So I'm looking at sort of one main body piece, a second piece for the strap, and a third piece for the handle, a fourth piece for this mesh, fifth piece for the sort of button board, whatever it may be called, and then the individual buttons as a separate thing there, and the antenna. So it's understanding and having a bit of a plan before you start of how you are going to sort of construct this. And you can see in here and the silhouette how that kind of is bent in. You've got that kind of hard edge there as it softly bends off, and then getting that kind of feel. So looking at this, I might kind of try and model it in one first to kind of get that even bevel, and then come in and separate it and refine this edge to break up the silhouette of that. So let's get going. Let's get started. First of all, I'm going to come into my side view and I'll also do my top view to get, and I'll hit the cube button on there. And if you notice, if yours comes in a lot smaller, if I go to create polygon primitives and cube option box, by default, this is all set at 111. I've just upped it to 100 across the board, and then I just hit create, and it just gives me a little bit of a better starting point for me, I think. So if I'm doing this, I want to stay perfectly central as well. So if I bring this down, I can see that I haven't quite got this central to the grid, but I want to stay modeling on the grid. I'd much rather come in and adjust my reference than my model. I want to be working central to the grid as much as possible, because it will make my life a lot easier. So once I've got it loosely in place, like so, I'll just lock that back again and come in. And again, if I want to see the background, I'm just going to come in and hit this little icon there, which is X-ray. So now I can sort of see just a little bit. And again, if you're struggling, I can turn on my wireframe so I can see what's happening. And if you're still struggling to see, I can actually turn the grid off, because I'm not working to the grid as such for this project. I'm working to the reference. So I can then come in, and then I'm just going to hold down right click, grab my vertices, and I'm just going to start lining this up with my reference. So I'm going to come down, line that up as close as I can, and then select all of those, and then I'm going to expand that out until I've got that edge there. So I've got the basic width, and then if I come into my top view here, I know that my width is right from the side, so I want to just lower this down to match it from the top, and that should be spot on, which it is. X-ray, and then expand out to the edges there. Now it's a little bit wide on that one, but I'm going to go with that, and then just double check in the front view. So your reference will never be 100% spot on, but you want to kind of just use them as a guide, but don't get too kind of stuck on making it absolutely perfect spot on, because you'll just end up wasting a lot of time trying to make it perfect, when a lot of the time the reference won't necessarily be perfect. So it may be that this can just come across a little bit. Just turn this off and wireframe. I'm going to move my reference over, because I know that these are orthographic images, so that might just be a little off center, and then I can just push that out a bit more, and then that is matching beautifully. And then the front one, I might want to just move over again. So these images obviously have been professionally taken, so they're nice and reliable, and I am getting that kind of match as close as possible. And on this one, there is a bit of a skew because of the angle in which we're taking it from, but it's only very slight. I'm ignoring the top, and I'm just getting, so if we got that there, then we know that this is actually a bit bigger, because we know that the side and the top is side and top is actually spot on. So this, with the skew of the angle, is taking it off a little bit, but we can use this as a guide anyway. So I might just kind of put that roughly in the middle, looking at the bevel in the bottom there, so that we get this piece looking right. So once we've got that and we know that we're sort of happy with it, this is my basic kind of structure that I want to work with. One thing though that I'm just going to do is select everything in my scene, including this, and I'm just going to move the whole lot up so it's sitting on my grid. I just prefer it to be above the grid. So where I've done that, if you notice that all my pivot points, if I hold down D, it allows me to move pivot points, and what we're seeing here is my pivot point from the object and the 3 pivot points for my reference images. If I hold down D and V, that turns into a circle, and it allows me, it turns on snap to point, allows me to snap my pivot point to a corner, and now those 4 pivots has turned into 1 because it's moved them all to the same point. And then I can just hold down X, which is snap to grid, turns this on, and then I can just grab the Y axis and snap that down to the grid, so I know it's perfectly on there. So that's just, again, personal preference. I like to work on the grid and get a sense of floor. And then we're there. And then I'll just turn that into reference once more. So how are we going to go and start making this into a high poly version of this radio? So I want to get this bevel first of all, and the bevel is on every single edge when we look at the perspective view. So it's equal and even across every edge. So that's what I want to do. So in order to do that, I'm going to select all my edges, right click, go up to edge, draw a box over them all. And I'm going to come into here and go to my modeling toolkit, which is this one if it's not turned on. And I'm going to hit bevel. And it will do this. If we look in 3D view, you can see what it's done. But if I hit T, which is my transform box, I can increase and decrease the value of this bevel. So if I come in here, I can get a better kind of look on this. And again, this is where you want to be working to proper scale, because this will be really sensitive if you're not working in the right scale. Yeah. So I can do this manually as well. So 0.2, maybe 0.15. So you can try and get this as accurately as possible. I'm looking for this edge to be on that kind of hard edge that I pointed out a moment ago. So maybe 1.4, no, the wrong way, 1.6. And I feel pretty confident with that. But then what I want to do is increase my divisions, or segments rather. And then that will give me that nice kind of curvature. Now, one thing that I see commonly with people that make this mistake is when they are modeling high poly, they assume that they just crank it up and go, yeah, there we go. There's that nice perfect curve. But you want to stay as low as possible with this. So I'm going to go for 3 segments. And yes, it seems quite faceted. But when I hit 3 on the keyboard, it then softens that and smooths that out so that we end up with that kind of nice bevel, and you don't need all that information. I could potentially hit T on the keyboard, try it at 2, and hit 3 on the keyboard and see what that does. Now that doesn't quite give me the same definition that I want. So if I do 3, it will. If I do 4, it holds that curvature a little bit better. But I think for me, yeah, I'm going to go with 4 to hold that shape just a bit more. And I'll come in and I'll edit this at a later date, but I'm just getting that general bevel that will get that central section more than anything right. And you see as we go through. And we can also model, and what I also like to do when I'm modeling is I'll have a multi-cut, so shift right click, once in option mode, so Q to quit out of that, right click in option mode, shift right click, and I'll go to multi-cut, and then I will hold down control, and if I middle mouse click, it will automatically position that in the middle. So I like to do this, so I've got, I can always got my sort of middle axes there on the 0, 0, 0 point there. And it also means that I could, if I want, completely delete half and just model on half and then duplicate it over afterwards if I want to. And I do that often, but I like to see everything when I'm sort of working. But we'll go through and we'll see this. So now I've got the basic body. I'm happy with that. The next big things are these indentations. So I want to come in and I want to create that. So I'm going to select these 4 faces that I've just have created, and I'm going to shift right click and go to extrude. And then on this, I always prefer to use the sliders rather than manually. I'm going to use my offset tool to slide this in like so, and then I'll hit Q. So we've got that basic kind of thing going on the top. And now I just need to give this a little bit more shape. So I can come in here and perhaps scale that down sort of to try and match it. And we're going to want to have this curved corner again, so we might want to bevel. But this is where I'll work on perhaps 1/2 rather than all 4 to try and get this right. So I want to bevel this down, and one thing that I'm wondering is the distance down going to be equal to the distance on the front? Is one thing. So I think it probably will. So what I'm going to do is come into the front, and the alternative way is to just hold down Control and draw in lines like this. And then if I was to do that, the issue potentially with that is that it brings lines in across the top, as we can see there, and brings in those additional loops. Thinking about this, I think that may be the better option rather than extruding. So I'm going to come back in here. I'm just going to multi-cut straight across there and there. Come into my front view and do the same here and here. And I'm going to do the sides as well. Now, looking at it on the reference, the bevel in here and here seems to match that corner. So I want to have that same bevel information really going on. But we've got that there, that's okay. And in the front view now, what I can do is do the same thing of what I did before, because I've got those edges coming around from the other piece. And then I can just bring this out to here. And obviously we haven't got enough information yet. So I'm going to bring in my multi-cut, hold down middle mouse click to go in the middle. That's the one I was looking for, to give myself a little bit more information. And then I can just move this out a little piece there. So you notice that I'm dragging. If I just undo a second. If I just click and drag, you'll see that there's still a point here. And that is because it's underneath. So it's going, because of the method I've done now, it's going all the way around. So to keep this nice and even, I'm just going to drag them all over. So then my topology just stays a bit cleaner and easier for me to use. Now I don't need this information underneath, but it's going to, the high poly, this construction mesh, it doesn't matter how high it gets because we're going to bake that information down essentially. So I just want that information there at the moment. So the other thing that I like to do is keep these kind of things straight. And at the moment you can see on the side it's all, and then it goes up. So actually that's fine. And then I'm going to want to bevel this. So, but first of all, I'm only working on this side at the moment. So I will at this point just delete this half altogether and then come in, and I'm going to select one and hold down tab and drag select those others because I don't want to select the ones on the bottom. And then I'm going to tab select that one there. So I'm going to extrude them all at the same time in order to give me a decent, an equal extrude. And what I'm going to do, I think I'm going to hold down V and drag this down and snap it to this point there. So it's the same depth as the bevel, which I think will then allow me to have the same bevel within this corner. So we'll go around and have a look. So if I come in, what I want to do is bevel this edge, and I think I'm going to want to, yeah, I think it's just that edge that I'm going to want to bevel. But then if I just come in to here and hit 3 on the keyboard, you can start to see the shape sort of forming. But we need to sort of strengthen that. So let's just come in, and then I want to actually delete these faces because we want it to mirror in a moment. And now I'm going to select these faces, and now I've got a feeling this isn't going to work properly, but we'll come to that in a moment. And then I also want to do these corners that I'm going to bevel, and this I don't have a corner on here, so that's why I think it's going to go a little bit wrong on the top, and we may need to kind of rethink that, but we'll just see how it goes at the moment. So bevel segments was 4, and then this time I'm going to turn my fraction to 1 because I know that 1 will then take it to this line, which is where it will match that bevel there. Now the top, again, I don't think it's right, but I do think that this is potentially correct now. So I've got that there, but we may have, because we've gone right to the edge, overlapping vertices. So if I just draw a box, you can see, yep, the two, because I've beveled and pushed one edge directly into the other. And you can see, and if you don't see this, display, heads up display, poly count, got 2 vertices sitting on top of each other, which will cause issues. You can see when sort of smoothing out. So I'm just going to draw a box over everything. 298, shift right click, merge, and come across to merge, 281. And then if I draw a box over that vertice, 1 again. So just be aware when you do things like that to take note of what's happening and make sure. So you can see now that it's starting to get that, but I'm getting these artifacts in here because these edges aren't going anywhere. So we need to tie these edges off somewhere. So I'm going to come in and grab my multicut tool, and I might just take these directly down. Why? So then they are edge loops and not just going nowhere. And I'm going to come across here, and I'm going to hold down Shift and Control to make sure that that comes straight across. Y, which sets that cut and then also reactivates the tool to use again. So I'm just following kind of where they would go naturally. So when I hit 3 on the keyboard now, you can see that that kind of holds its shape a lot better, and I'm not having those artifacts as they were before. We're getting slight artifacts in the corner, but when you look at the reference, I feel like that kind of matches quite nicely anyway. Now, I'm not happy with the top. What I might do is just come in, and I'm just going to do a middle cut through that. No, I won't. Well, no. These edges here, I don't want to have them following the line. So I'm going to select those, and then D and V, I'm going to move my pivot point to here, and then I'm going to scale those in, which will straighten that line back off. Turn the grid off for a moment. And then with these ones underneath, I'm just going to move those to straighten the line back up, because it's confusing when I'm looking from in the X-ray view anyway. So here I've got the bevel, and it's just not working for me because it's just not getting that close thing. So I need more geometry in the top to hold that curve. I'm happy with the front, but I'm not happy with this section. So what I'm going to do, I want more additional information in here, basically. or to bevel the one corner, because I haven't actually beveled a corner yet. So what I might do is just eliminate these, delete edges. And I'm going to delete those for now. So I've just got this basic shape back again. And then just selecting that edge and holding V and snapping it back to the point, because I want to make sure that we've got the right depth, that's for sure. So I'm just basically cleaning this up. So I'm going to just straighten these out, selecting the edge and just scaling those in. And what they'll do is they'll straighten those on the axis. So so I know that they're then perfectly sort of, or they should be perfectly right angle to each other. And then if I just move that there and here and here, and then I'm going to take those edges and just move those back down into sort of that position. These edges, and move those back into this position. And that back into, say, this position. So what I'm going to try this time is beveling again with these corners. And then to a fraction of 1. And then increase the segments to 4 again. And then, okay, so I'm going to undo because this isn't flat. So I'm going to get this edge and make sure that that is flat as well. Come into here. So it should. Okay, I'm going to step back a few until we get to before I beveled. Apologies. But then this is the whole point. This is either this kind of little silly things that I do. And sometimes it's good to witness like so, rather than just kind of re-editing to make it kind of seem perfect when it's not always. So I just want to make sure that it's all lined up. So you can see if I did this right from the beginning, I wouldn't have had these issues. But there we go. It's the way it is. So select those edges and I'm going to bevel those again. Select 4 segments, increase the fraction to 1. It's still not, but I'm just going to touch those up myself. But I'm having an issue in that corner. Something's going funny in that corner. So I'm just going to go over and just try and merge. Come into my top view. I'm going to select my vertices and just select these top verts there. Make sure that they are flat, which I don't think perhaps they are. Or it's just the shading. So my shading's gone a bit funny at the moment. So what I'm going to just do is mesh and set to face with all my faces selected. So I'll average them first and then set to face. And then it will all be hard and blocky, but it just sort of fix that. But it will help me just see this a little bit clearer. I just want to make sure that there's no overlapping things here. And then what I will do, I'm going to take these vertices and just hold down, hit W to get a move tool. I'm just going to move those back here so that they're aligned with that, just to maybe prevent any kind of issues. And then I will grab these as well. Just fly around, make sure we've got all of them. And align those off as well. Holding down V and snap to that, just so there's consistency as much as possible. And then I'm going to select the edges and bevel. And it's something like this, which is really simple and shouldn't really give me any trouble. And just that little oversight, there we go. Now that's going out what I want with no particular issues or errors. So I've got that kind of how I want it. And then if I hit 3 in the keyboard, we're going to get those errors again. So I want to tie off like I did a moment ago. Shift right click, multi-cut, and I'll take this across to there. And that's one thing, I always check the line and then move till it snaps, just because I find it an easier method. And then I can get perhaps third one in there. Might have done too many on the bevel. Did I just do 3 on the other one? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That'll do. I want to make it even. And then multi-cut. So yeah, I drag on the line till it snaps. Just so I'm going to be so precise then. And then shift and control. Y. Shift and control. It's freaking out on me. Okay, it's not letting me do that for some reason, so I'll just do it, like say there for now. Oops. Come on. Y. And then come across. And Y. And then I'll just grab, oops. I'll grab those. And then I'll move my pivot point to my origin. And then I'll merge those in. So we've got that there. If I hit 3 in the keyboard, it should smooth out relatively nicely. Got a bit of an artifact going on there. So let's just make sure that merge. What's going on? Something's going on. So there's 3 there. Okay. Because I didn't merge those vertices. So there's 37, and there clearly isn't 37. Merge and merge. 24. 3 in the keyboard. There we go. That's got rid of those issues. And there, and we have got a triangle in there. That's not, I mean, we could, delete that edge. And then that's a 4-sided shape. But it's just holding that line just a little bit for me. So now I've got the basic kind of shape with indents. A little bit more hassle than I was wanting. But now I can come in, and what I want to do is just adjust this top level. So what I'm going to select here is just these faces on this top bit here. Come into this one and press Control and 1, and it isolates. But what I also want to do is come into my image planes and select my top view as well. And then Shift top. Oh, it's not allowing me to do it. Come in there. Oops. Control 1. Okay. Maybe if I just take them off reference for a moment and show my image planes for a second and Shift select there and then press Control 1. That's what I want. And now I just turn those back into reference. Come in here. So now I've just, if we look at this, if I press Control 1 on that, hidden everything else apart from that one section. So I can look at this and just affect, let me just double check. I should be able to just affect those vertices because that's the only ones that I can see. So now I can start coming in and I'm going to grab this whole area, grab that, which allows me to move in both directions and move that down to there. And now that matches that nicely. And I'm going to select this and grab this and move this to say there, but it needs to rotate. So I'm going to D and V and move that to here. And then just actually D and V, move it to there. And then rotate that around ever so slightly. We'll move that, say there. Push that back slightly. Pull that down slightly to open that up a little. I think I might need to do the same here. Push that back slightly. Push that up slightly. And then if I press Control 1, you can see I've now edited that without affecting the other bit areas. And I can press Control 1 in there as well, which brings underneath back through. And then I want to just turn off my image planes again. So now I've got this object mode 3 on the keyboard. And now I've got that shape matching kind of how I want. And it's starting to look all right. We've got a few pinching bits here. When that's because this edge doesn't go anywhere. So I'm just going to tie those off. So I'm just going to put in an edge loop, say there. Or actually, what I might do is come up here and just tie it off there. Rather than taking it all the way around. Or I can tie it off to the corner. 3 on the keyboard. And now we have something that's looking half decent at the very least. Where are we? What am I looking for? Multi-cut tool. And I might tie that off again to the corner. There. Just to support that edge. And we hit smooth. I could have done the same, to be fair, here. And perhaps I will, just for consistency. So select these two edges that I created. Shift right click, delete edge. You want to do shift right click, delete edge, or control delete. So make sure you delete the vertices as well. That's another common error that I see. And just tie this off. Like so, because I know that I don't need any additional information there. So that's fine. So I've got that basic shape. Now I do want to kind of make that sort of harder. Now, if I look at my reference, you can see that it kind of goes in and then it kind of goes back on itself. So there's a bit of a gap before we get to that grill. And the same there, you can see it ties in and then goes under. So that's something that I want to achieve. So I'm going to select that middle face, and I'll select that middle face as well. And now what I'm going to do is press Shift and the greater than key, which is also the full stop key, to grow my selection. And then that will grow that out like so. And then I'm going to press Shift, Control, or Shift right click and extrude. And I'm just ever so slightly going to push that back to give us that little lip. And that will be even and equal on that side as well. And I feel like this one can be a little bit greater though, but I also want to make sure I delete these edges because we will be mirroring this in a moment. And delete. And then what I'm going to do is take that edge or that run of faces, double click the next one to select all of it. And then I'll do these separately this time because it will be slightly different. I'm going to extrude and then do the thickness negative value. And I'll go in, say 0.3. And again, I want to delete these little faces there. And then when I hit 3 on the keyboard, you've now got that slight lip, which is coming in, which is great. Then on here, I want to select those faces again and grow the selection again. And I'm just going to push this back a little bit more because I feel like the space with this one is a bit greater. So I've got that. And then I'll shift click to get that whole run. And then I'm going to extrude thickness in a negative value down, and then make sure we delete these faces. And you're starting to kind of get that sense. Now you can see at the minute it's a little bit faceted. So if I select this and press page up, it will also increase the smooth preview. So you get an idea of what it's going to look like. Now there you have got this error coming on that, but I kind of feel like when you look at the image, no, you don't have that, to be fair. But that, I think that may be this. Okay, so we'll look at that in a moment and how we can sort of get around that. But for now, we're coming in, and now I want to just refine some of these edges because I want this edge to be kind of perhaps not quite so soft. So I'm going to select that edge, which will run all the way around, and I'm going to bevel this edge. So if I come in and bevel. Did you not like that? Come on, bevel. There we go. So I'm just going to bevel that edge a little bit. So when I hit 3 in the keyboard, it might have a little bit more hold to it. But then what I want to do as well is take this edge, which comes all the way around. And I want to take that edge, which should come all the way around, but there we go. And then for this, I'm going to shift right click and bevel. But this time I'm going to turn off the chamfer so it retains its shape and just lower the fraction. So when I hit 3, it holds that shape a little better. So then we've got that. Right. So, and I feel like that's a little bit better. Maybe it's a little bit too far back, but I don't know. It's relatively straightforward. I can select that and use the grow selection again. This time I want to make sure that I come in and select that edge on the top as well, so that when I bring this closer, we're looking at over here, I'm bringing that edge with me. So it's still, so yeah, I think that's a little better. So we've got that edge in there. We've got this edge coming in here. And if I want to zoom in, I can go to my, say, vertex, just select those and hit F on the keyboard, which will take me right in, and then it centers around this point. I may want to do a similar thing in this. I want to bevel that edge. Just reduce the fraction of it. Just to hold some of its shape a little bit more. Make sure it's gone all the way around. Yeah. And then I'm just going to bevel that edge and hit 3, so it just retains that shape a little bit better. But yeah, okay, I think it's starting to look pretty decent. And the one thing though that I want to say is that it's not completely soft all the way around. There is a bit of hold to this. So what I want to do is take maybe this edge loop and this edge loop, and I'm going to bevel it, take the chamfer off, reduce the fraction, so maybe 0.5, nope, 0.1, hit Q on the keyboard, and then when we hit 3, it will just, or it should, hold that edge a little bit better, although it's not that much of a sharp edge. So what I want to do is just take the inside edge and delete that inside edge. So it kind of holds it, but it's not so sharp, and then that also fixes some of the errors that was coming up there, like so. So I think I'm relatively happy with the way that this is looking. It'll do for now anyway, as we kind of go into the next stage. So we've got that. Now I want to duplicate it and merge it over. So I'm just, at this point, I'm going to just center my pivot and then press D and V and drag along the X until it snaps to that central point. And then I'm also going to delete my history. So you can see here, all this history that I've done, anything that I've done is all been recorded. And that can cause issues as we move forward and kind of when we do a mirroring and things like that. So I will delete my history now and then freeze my transformations. So everything is now reset back to 0, 0, 0 and 1, 1, 1 in the scale. Control D, which will duplicate my cube to cube 2. And then in my X, looking down here, I want this to be a -1. And then it will flip that in the X on the -1 corresponding to where my pivot point is. Shift right click, combine the two. So now it's into a cube 3. And then I want to just make sure that I merge these central vertices 160 down to 88. And I think that's caused some issues, maybe in here, because I know it should just go in half. 160 is 80 as opposed to 88, so it's missed some. So I'm going to guess this section. Yeah, so that gap hasn't been closed off properly. So if that happens, that thankfully is a nice easy fix. So I'm just going to select that middle run. And then I'm going to scale to the middle. And then I'll merge that again. So I would step back a few, so it's at 160 now. And then merge vertice 80. There we go. So now I know that it's halved. It's proper, it's correct. And if I double click that and it gives me that edge loop, then I also know that it's right. So hit 3 on the keyboard. And now we've got that, which is matching pretty nicely from the front, from the side, and the top. And I'm pretty okay with the way we're going. Now, it may be a good idea, considering I've just been working on this for an hour, to actually save this, which is what I should have done a moment ago. But also, now that I've duplicated and flipped it and merged, you'll see that I've still got the polycube 1, 2, and then here. And if I open that up, there's my transform history. So if I select this now, I want to delete my history, which will then clean that up for me as well. And then I'm just going to come in here, radio, underscore body, so that I know what each section is as well. And then I'm going to save this. So for the first time I save, I'm going to go to File, Save As, Save Scene As, and then it will automatically take me to my radio scenes file. And I'm just going to say, I don't know, radio, and then I'll put .0001.mb for Maya binary, and then I'm going to save that. And the reason why I've done that is because it will make it so much easier for us to do incremental saving. So if I just sort of change my scene a moment and press Control, Alt, and S, down the bottom, it will then say I've saved it out as 0002. So I'm never overwriting a scene. I am always going over new files, so I can always step back if I want. I always want to work non-destructive if at all possible. So we'll leave that there for now and move on to the next stage.